It seems there's a new poster boy for the right-wing Christian terrorist movement we hear about whenever jihadists kill someone, and the media want to assure us that Muslims fighting unbelievers has nothing at all to do with the Quran commanding Muslims to fight unbelievers. No, the real reason Muslims have committed more than 17,000 terrorist attacks in the past 10 years is that all religions have their violent radicals. And we can prove that all religions have their violent radicals by pointing to... Here's where it really helps to have a Christian terrorist to point to. The old poster boy, of course, was Oklahoma City bomber Timothy McVeigh, used in such context as, what's that? Muslims shouting Allahu Akbar flew a couple of planes into the World Trade Center, killing thousands of people? Well, don't blame Islam, after all. You wouldn't blame Christianity for the Oklahoma City bombing, would you?
But that doesn't mean the whole Muslim religion should be indicted. That is my complaint. I mean, McVeigh probably was a Christian, and he bombed the Oklahoma federal building. But does that mean that a Christian church can't be built near there and Christianity is blamed? No, I don't like that broad brush.
Ron Paul has a point there. We don't blame Christianity for the Oklahoma City bombing. Are we being inconsistent? No, Timothy McVeigh was an agnostic, not a Christian. He was raised as a Catholic, but he became an agnostic. He said that science was his religion. Now, since he didn't believe in the Bible, it would be kind of weird to blame the Bible for his actions. But we don't blame agnosticism either. Double standards? No, agnosticism had nothing to do with McVeigh's decision to blow up the Alfred P. Murrah building. There's no agnosticism handbook commanding agnostics to kill in the name of agnosticism. There's no international pattern of agnostics committing acts of terrorism while quoting the same agnostic scriptures, screaming Agnostu Akbar. If an agnostic's going to kill because of an ideology, he needs agnosticism plus something else. So Timothy McVeigh has never been a good example of the fabled right-wing Christian terrorist, just as he's never been a good example of the fabled right-wing leprechaun. But the world still needed someone to keep the all religions are equally likely to incite violence myth going, and McVeigh was typecast in a role he never intended to play. Things have changed, however. The 32-year-old sociopathic Ken doll Anders Behring Breivik does claim to be a Christian, and he even calls for a modern Christian crusade against political correctness, Marxism, and Islam. Surely, if anyone's going to take our attention off the more than 17,000 Islamic terrorist attacks we've seen over the past decade, it's this guy. I suppose I'm absolutely deranged for even thinking about questioning the mainstream media's description of Breivik, but there is just one tiny little problem with labeling Breivik a Christian fundamentalist. He left us with a 1,500-page manifesto explaining exactly what he believes, and Christian fundamentalist, I assure you, he ain't. Breivik calls himself a cultural Christian, but he puts most European atheists and agnostics in the same category. He writes, "A majority of so-called agnostics and atheists in Europe are cultural conservative Christians without even knowing it. So what is the difference between cultural Christians and religious Christians? If you have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ and God, then you are a religious Christian. Myself and many more like me do not necessarily have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ and God. We do, however, believe in Christianity as a cultural, social identity and moral platform. This makes us Christian." Believing in Christianity as part of your cultural identity is what makes you a Christian. Well, how much Christianity do you need in your culture if you want to be counted among the Christians? Breivik tells us. You don't need to have a personal relationship with God or Jesus to fight for our Christian cultural heritage. It is enough that you're a Christian agnostic or a Christian atheist, an atheist who wants to preserve at least the basics of the European Christian cultural legacy, Christian holidays, Christmas, and Easter. Yes, if you like getting presents on December 25th, you qualify as a Christian, even if you don't believe in God, Jesus, or the Bible. According to Breivik, the cultural factors are more important than your personal relationship with God, Jesus, or the Holy Spirit. Interesting. I think Breivik may be the first Christian fundamentalist in history to suggest that celebrating holidays is more important than knowing God.
What more do we know about the gunman, Nala?
Well, we know that he is 32 years old, and we know that he lived with his mother. And apparently, according to some of the websites that he maintained, including a Facebook site, he had some pretty Christian fundamentalist views.
Let's take a look at his Christian testimony. Regarding my personal relationship with God, I guess I'm not an excessively religious man. I am first and foremost a man of logic. However, I am a supporter of a monocultural Christian Europe. What? Preach on, Brother Breivik! Dying to hear more? I'm not going to pretend I'm a very religious person, as that would be a lie. I've always been very pragmatic and influenced by my secular surroundings and environment. In the past, I remember I used to think religion is a crutch for weak people. What is the point in believing in a higher power if you have confidence in yourself? Pathetic. Perhaps this is true for many cases. Religion is a crutch for many weak people, and many embrace religion for self-serving reasons as a source for drawing mental strength to feed their weak emotional state, for example, during illness, death, poverty, etc. Since I am not a hypocrite, I'll say directly that this is my agenda as well. So he admittedly embraced religion for the self-serving purpose of drawing mental strength. He goes on, if praying will act as an additional mental boost or soothing, it is the pragmatical thing to do. I guess I will find out. If there is a God, I will be allowed to enter heaven as all other martyrs for the church in the past. If there is a God, he's not even convinced that God exists, and he claims that he believes in Christianity simply because it provides a mental boost. It's religious Red Bull. This raises an obvious question. If Breivik is only looking for a mental boost, why choose Christianity? Any religion can serve as a crutch. Breivik's Norwegian. Why not believe in Odinism and the power of Thor's hammer? Well, he tells us, as a cultural Christian, I believe Christendom is essential for cultural reasons. After all, Christianity is the only cultural platform that can unite all Europeans, which will be needed in the coming period during the third expulsion of the Muslims. Odinism is significant for the Nordic countries, but it does not have the potency to unite us against such a devastating force as Islam, cultural Marxism, multiculturalism, and capitalist globalism. Christianity is Breivik's religion of choice because it has the best chance of uniting Europeans against Marxism and Islam. If he'd been born in India, Hinduism would have been the religion for him. But he's in Europe, so it's Christianity.
It has since come to light that this person was a fundamental Christianist, fundamental Christianist, fundamental Christianist, fundamental Christianist.
Now, as a Bible-thumping Christian fundamentalist, Breivik must want to establish a Christian theocracy, right? Not so fast. It is not required that you have a personal relationship with God or Jesus in order to fight for our Christian cultural heritage in the European way. In many ways, our modern societies and European secularism are a result of European Christendom and the Enlightenment. It is therefore essential to understand the difference between a Christian fundamentalist theocracy, everything we do not want, and a secular European society based on our Christian cultural heritage, what we do want. Breivik says he wants a secular society, not a Christian theocracy. Well then, what's the role of the church in Breivik's European secular utopia? The goal must obviously not be to create a new theocracy. Europe will still remain predominantly secular. However, the church's primary role will be to contribute to unity by offering cultural and spiritual opportunities. The church will once again be allowed to do what it was intended to do, to propagate and maintain cultural unity through predefined rituals and celebrations. The purpose of the Christian church, according to Breivik, is to maintain cultural unity through predefined rituals and celebrations, celebrations such as Christmas. Notice that the role of the church is to be defined by the government, not vice versa. Indeed, the church has to be reformed to bring it in line with Breivik's plan for Europe. The contemporary definition of the Christian worldview will be reformed to correlate with nationalistic doctrines, allowing the national pursuit of prosperity and allowing unlimited research and development relating to every aspect of technology and science. Technology and science? Surely, as a Christian fundamentalist, Breivik wants the church to oversee scientific research. Not quite. As for the church and science, it is essential that science takes an undisputed precedence over biblical teachings. Europe has always been the cradle of science, and it must always continue to be that way. Well, does the church at least get to make some political decisions? The church and church leaders will not be allowed to influence non-cultural political matters in any way. This includes science, research and development, and all non-cultural areas which will benefit Europe in the future. Now, let's put all of this together. Breivik believes in a version of Christianity that doesn't even require belief in God, although belief in God may be helpful as a psychological stimulant. Any religion can serve as a crutch, of course, but Christianity is best in this case because lots of Europeans already celebrate Christmas. Thus, Christianity has the best chance of uniting Europeans against Muslims and commies. The main purpose of Christianity is to provide cultural unity through Easter egg hunts and Christmas carols about baby Jesus, but beyond that, science reigns supreme and the church has no say in politics. So this is the much anticipated fundamentalist Christian terrorist, living proof that all religions are equally likely to incite violence.
He is described as right-wing, a Christian fundamentalist, and having anti-Muslim views.
Send Europe back to the days of white Christian domination.
It turns out on Saturday we found out the attacks were carried out by Anders Breivik, a native Norwegian Christian.
Seriously? Let me ask a question. What influence did Christianity have on Breivik's decision to kill a bunch of Norwegians? None. How did the Bible contribute to his views on Islam and Marxism? Didn't. If you read the manifesto, Breivik's path to radicalism isn't hard to figure out. He grew up in Oslo, where he personally witnessed around 50 violent attacks by Muslims against non-Muslims. Breivik was even the victim in some of these cases. He knew girls who were raped by Muslims. Seeing over and over again how Muslim immigrants were treating the native Norwegians, he started wondering if Islam might be responsible. So he studied the Quran and the Hadith and found that Islam does indeed promote violence and intolerance. He wanted to go into politics, but he realized that the European political spectrum is dominated by multiculturalists who regard any criticism of Islam as racist hate-mongering. He also concluded that dialogue and debate are pointless because if you question Islam, the media will simply label you a Nazi and be done with you. Without any peaceful avenues available to him, Breivik saw his only options as do nothing or do something drastic. He decided on a by any means necessary approach, meaning he would do anything up to and including dropping a nuclear bomb on a European city if it would help stop the Muslim colonization of Europe. Since Breivik believes that resisting Islam requires a unified culture, and Christian holidays can serve as part of a unified culture, Breivik thinks Europe should embrace its Christian roots. So what we don't have here is a Christian fundamentalist using violence to spread the gospel. Breivik is a person who hates Islam and Marxism and who's willing to use any tool that will help him rescue Europe from what he regards as cultural suicide. If Christianity will help, he'll be a Christian. If violence will help, he'll slaughter dozens of teenagers. That's the message you get from Breivik's manifesto. You also learn that Breivik is an egomaniac, a sociopath, and a total loser who can't stay away from steroids or prostitutes, and who spends entirely too much time playing video games and photoshopping pictures of himself. But is he a Christian? Well, if we define Christian as someone who has a relationship with God through Jesus Christ, Breivik admits he's not a Christian. We could define Christian as someone who follows the teachings of Christianity, but Breivik doesn't qualify here either. The Bible commands Christians to love our neighbors, to love our enemies, to pray for those who persecute us, to be at peace with all men, to do everything in love, and to honor all people. If you're walking around shooting teenagers, I'd say it's pretty obvious you're not following the teachings of Christianity. In order to classify Breivik as a Christian, we'd have to define Christian as someone who's raised in a culture that's been influenced by Christianity and wants to see that culture continue. And this is the only kind of Christian Breivik claims to be.